what's going on there, Sheik?
So, one of the things that I was thinking about as we were getting ready for this particular episode was respect in a relationship, right? And a lot of times I hear people ask, like before all this, I dealt with relationships and dating and things like that. And, me as a coach in that field. And a lot of things that I hear people say, and I've heard conversations, and people talk about respect in a relationship and things like that. And so for us to be where we are now, that's something that I wanted to point out, was because we didn't just start being respectful to each other now, right? Because I remember even in family members, we would hear them talk to each other and call each other names. It was one of those things that was extensive, right? I mean, it wasn't just, and I understand that when we are where we're from, we tend to do certain things. We tend to bring certain things with us. It's just part of, nature, nurture, right? What we see, what we believe, just like the things I saw. Right. But what I liked about it was there were things in the relationship, like, for example, when it came to those type of things, derogatory comments or name calling or even physical, that was something that you was like, we're not going to do that. And so right in the beginning, the respect was there, right? Right. And then the way that you conducted yourself as far as your values as a father, that was there. And I respected that. I respected that you saw your grandfather, just like I saw my grandparents, you saw your grandparents. And I remember that for you, there was a lot of things that you may have battled with in that, and seeing that, because you didn't know what you knew to be true versus what you did not know to be true. But what I did know is that what I know about myself is that I always see people for who they are, even if they don't see themselves for who they are. And I think that was one of the things that we've always had for each other, was respect. And I think it was because we both saw each other just for who we are, and we deserve to have that respect. And so even sitting here 15 years post-divorce, right, our respect for one another just didn't start now, right? It started before. What do you have to say about that?
I think it kind of had an ebb and flow for me because of the situations that I kind of would put us in different ways. I think when you look at respect as a husband or wife, it comes with a commitment to doing the right things. And I didn't always do the right things. And we've talked about those things in previous episodes where we, I did not lead in a way that represented respect, because if that was so, I would have probably never stepped outside the marriage.
Yeah, but but I'm sorry to interrupt you. I look at the word respect the same way I look at the word as trust, right? You'll hear people say, I don't trust that person as far as I can see them, in terms of what they would do with another person. But then that same person they saying they don't trust about whether they will commit adultery or infidelity, they'll give them the 4-digit PIN to their bank account. So it's like a double. It's like you trust in this, feeling the other. So that's what I'm saying to you. Respect is still, you may have done those things that you see as disrespectful, but there's still a way in which you do things. Like I said before, you never came home late. You never stayed out on the weekends. You never was up in the club. You half the time you were home more than I was. Now I know you was getting your rest in because you had to go back out in them streets and everything. You know what I'm saying? You had to get your little cat nap. You know what I'm saying? Get your little cat nap. You know what I'm saying? Before you go back in them streets, right? But you was at home. You was at home though. You was at home. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I think you're absolutely right. You can respect a person's in different ways. There's levels to it. And I was always taught it ain't what you do, it's how you do what you do. And so if I was stepping out, I tried to make sure that there was not a situation that was somebody, would come and knock on your door. But that's another thing altogether. But hey.
Well, you tried. You put an effort in. You understand what I'm saying? You put a good old, what they say, a good old college effort. Is that what they say? You put a good old college effort in.
But sometimes the situation.
Or what's that? The chicken, what is
the Chickasaw, the Blyville Chickasaw.
You put the good old Chickasaw Blyville effort in.
Sometimes it didn't play out that way. Because I think what happens, though, when we're talking about the respect, And I always put myself under the gun because sometimes you got to look at yourself in the mirror and you got to be the one to be accountable and be responsible for your actions and not always trying to point the finger at somebody else as to what you do and why you did it,
Right.
so, and I would raise my hand and say, yes, there were some situations, but overall, when I looked at the way I wanted to try and be, I could not be that perfect dude because of my own insecurities or whatever you want to call them, and greed and selfishness and stuff like that. And I think a lot of folks just won't own up to their shit. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just got to own up to it, and then that way you can grow and get better from that when you own it. It's almost like an alcoholic or a drug addict coming to the table.
Right. First is the
The first is
you have to
admitting
first
that you
admit.
got that issue or
Absolutely.
that situation.
Absolutely,
And
honey.
a lot of times I think within that, even in all my relationships, my previous relationships, that I I didn't want to take ownership, and I would look at myself, and I think you used to get on me. Hey, you can't throw the rock and hide your hand. You can't live. You don't live in a glass house, there, brother Newmys. But you said that to me many times, and I'd be like, okay, she got my ass, so I ain't gonna say shit. I'm just gonna go about my business. Sometimes, it's just that way. But I think when we look at respect overall, we had some Ike and Tina moments. You know what I'm saying? And those are not the most proudest moments that I can say within our relationships, because overall we tried our best to do what we with the tools what we had. And a lot of times you don't come with this this great book of how to do this stuff. There's no right way, because we come from anyway. But 75% of the homes are single family
Of
homes,
course.
and the women have carried the mantle of things for a long time. And this is just a little bit of a sidebar. I went to a mental health thing the other day over in Petersburg, and I looked around the church, and there were about 30 women there and 3 guys. So I think in a in the arena of thinking, you guys are the African American community. It's you. You guys have raised our kids. You guys have done all the great things. And our men have been absent from that process. And so when I was trying to be a husband, I I really was learning on the fly, trying to be a good dude, trying to figure it out. But I was and so that's no excuse for what it is. But you eventually evolve, and hopefully you evolve into somebody that's more well-rounded and
Right.
more understanding. But when we look at the respect factor, I think and I think sometimes, like you said, it can be in different values or caveats to it. Because when I look at certain issues and I say, well, if you stepped outside the marriage, did you really respect me? No, I look at it sometimes like, hey, sometimes people got to do what they need to do to survive that moment.
And that's what it's about.
To
And
survive that moment.
that's what it's about. And so for me as a wife, it was not about like, and again, this isn't anything but just because I was learning me just as you
Yeah,
was learning you.
absolutely. Right, right,
Right? We were growing together,
right.
right? What I seen didn't look like what I was going through, right? Because my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom. So although she worked and cooked, so she didn't, I mean, excuse me, she cooked and took care of the kids, so she didn't have to work, right? My mom, she didn't work most of my life. She was
Right.
on the system, and then once she did start work, it was when my brother and I were older. And so by that time we were 1 foot out the door. So for me, what I was doing, trying to balance all these things at one time, I seen it only in women in the military around me, and those were far and few in between, especially the ones who were double military. And the ones who were double military, they were having issues just like everybody else. And so we didn't know what we were doing, right? We didn't know what we were doing. All we
Right.
were know is that we were trying to do what we thought we were supposed to do. But I feel that looking back, I mean, hindsight is always 2020. That's why I look at
Absolutely.
it and say, well, that's why I never really blamed or put it where you did this and you. Like I said, I don't give anyone the green light to go out and do anything against anything, right? But I understand moments. That's what I understand. Because I've told you this time and time again, I never filed for divorce because you were cheating on me. I never filed for divorce because of that.
Why is that? Let me ask you
You
a
know what I mean?
question.
Because many things. First of all, I knew who you were when I got with you. You wasn't going to all of a sudden stop and come to a halt. It was just not going to happen. right? And I'm not giving you the green light or anything like that. But for the most part, as a woman, I just understand certain things because
Right.
I've seen
Right.
so many things.
Right.
Especially, I was raised predominantly by men, right?
Right.
So I've met girlfriends and wives, all, you know what I'm saying? What I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean? You
Right.
know, so it just is what it is, right? So for me, it was like, okay, I'm not blind to it, but I would always tell you, protect me. Don't bring nothing home to me. Don't bring nothing out in the streets. And I would tell you that all the time. And so, however, once things start coming into the home, right, where now I'm looking at, I'm knowing more than I need to know, right? It started to uncover the other things as well. So now I'm looking at this, and then I'm looking at all those other things that weren't where we needed it to be. Now, there
Right.
were a lot of things that we did have in place, but then there were a lot of things that were missing. So when I look at things like intimacy, and when I look at, just certain things like
Yeah.
the touchy, I remember there were times where, like, I was always, rubbing on you, but that was not what you did to me.
Right.
So in my mind, I felt that it wasn't me you desired. And so it had nothing. So it wasn't one of those things where I look at that as a bad thing. And I need people to understand that sometimes life is just that way. You meet people and they're only there for a reason or a season. Right. And so I think with us, it had nothing to do with you. Now, did I need to understand? Well, wait a minute. Am I okay?
Right.
Of
Right.
course I did. You know what I mean? Because I was like, hold up now. This is two marriages where one was, now the other one I never felt that adultery was an issue, but then he had his issues, right? That made the issues in our relationship huge, whatever. And so now I'm looking at it like, because I'm stepping into my 40s by the time we divorced. And I'm like, okay, I got to reflect and see what am I doing? And so a lot of it, I thought I was being too much. Like maybe I'm too much. Right. And so I recall times where I would do things because I thought maybe that's what it was. And so I had to discover that on my own. And that's not your fault. And that's what I want to make clear, because I think that when you're fighting to survive, especially like we talked about earlier, what we know, because when you're
Right.
doing what you need to do in that moment, you only doing what you need to do to survive. So you don't know. So in my mind, maybe I need to change who I am just a little. And I did that in the military. So we were doing both at the same time, the military and marriage for the second time. And when I was in a uniform, I had to be her. But when I came home, I didn't want to be her. I
Right.
wanted to just rest in my femininity.
Right. But sometimes I didn't
And
see
I
that
didn't
though.
have, yeah, and I never had that, but that's what I
But
desired. But that
but
wasn't your fault though, because
but you
I don't
never
think
showed
I
you
don't think I because I never
you know what
yeah, I'm
you
sorry.
and not to interrupt you, but I think the woman you displayed to me and you displayed to the kids was this chick that had it all together. So when you come as a damsel in distress, we didn't understand that. I didn't understand that because you had your shit together in my eyes. It seemed that way. You were always you were always this great NCO, this great drill sergeant, this great leader out in the community, even at home. I was talking to our oldest girl, and she says to me, she said, I patterned my entire life and career after her. Everything I do, if you watch, I mimicked her, everything she did. From my finances to the way I raised my kids to everything. I mimic it after her. And that's a testimony to who you were to her. And she looks at it and she said, hey, I learned so much about how to run a check. She said, Dad, I ain't learned nothing from you but passion and caring. But I learned my life skills from her. I learned it.
Yeah.
I learned how to be that woman, that boss chick, and run things. And sometimes I think with women who have strength like that, it can run a man away. It actually can make, because you don't need me. You remember you said that to me one time. I don't need you, but I like having you around.
Yeah, and I mean that with anybody.
Right.
But the thing about it is that's where that's a problem for me, because here's the thing. If I had not been who I was, we wouldn't have gotten where we gotten to.
Very, very likely. But
because there was a lot of things that you dropped the ball on, and you would have dropped the ball on.
Probably so.
You know that.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of times when you're looking at a situation, you look at the strengths and weaknesses of what the couple brings, and I don't think sometimes that we look at it in a vacuum. Oh, he should in defining roles with men and women.
Right.
Shit, you always been this chick that you'll go out there and change the oil if you could change a tire. That's the way you were raised, and
it had nothing to do with because you. It was because I didn't have. I never felt where I could fall back and know we was good.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? So I had to be her at all times. The only times that there were times and I say this and I'm not, even like I tell you when I was pregnant with the boy and the thing with the first car, right? Those are things that are edged in my memory forever because like I said before, because of one thing that got overlooked, it caused a snowball effect to other things, which ended up causing us more money, right? And so things like that. Right. For me, and you got to remember, I got pregnant with our son in 2002 and had him in 2003. Okay. So, or somewhere up in there. So at that point, we had only been married 3 years or so, right? Together for about 6 years. And so it's like, okay, the tone had already been set. And so and then if you remember, there's another incident. When I turned 30, remember, and I'm going to say this, and I need you to understand how I got here. But it's not. It's just that when you talk about what draws men away, and I need this to be understood, right? Because this is something that men need to understand. And you in your third marriage, I hope that this is something that maybe you can take a piece of it. But just like when I turned 30, I was pregnant with your son. If you remember that March, and I wanted to go to Red Lobster's in another city in Missouri. And I asked you to go. And you said you didn't feel like going. Now here I was, still a drill sergeant. You still was a chaplain assistant, which means your job was working in the air conditioning, and I was still out training privates. And I said, Newmys, I just want some Red Lobster for my birthday. To get to Red Lobster was an hour. Was it Springfield, Missouri we had to go to? When I went to Springfield, Missouri, on my way coming back, I got pulled over by a cop that I had to stand on the side of the road and show my stomach because here I was in a 3 Series BMW. And he felt like I didn't supposed to be in there. So he made me lift my shirt up on the side of the road to show that I was pregnant. And I had took my Red Lobster to go because I was like, I'm not going to stay up there late because it's going to be late by the time I get back. So I'm going to take my Red Lobster to go. I drove up there by myself. On the way coming back, I got pulled over in that car because the man was like, you sure you're not smuggling drugs up under your shirt?
I don't remember.
I know you don't. And on the side of the road, I had to pull up my shirt and show him that I had your baby in my stomach and not no drugs.
Okay, so
because he said that my Y, which if you look at the car, it still got the same license plate. The Y on there, he said he didn't know if it was a Y or a V. And my question to him was, why was you running my plates anyway? Why are you running my plates anyway? I hadn't done anything wrong. And so I say this to you is that in my mind, it took me back to when I was pregnant with my first son. And so if I got to do this stuff by myself, I got to do it by myself. And I'm just telling Jerry, I'm telling you,
I don't even recall.
I know you don't recall, but these are things that, I mean, I've told the story so many times and I know if you just remember deeply. And so all I could think about is that if my husband had drove me down here, this would have never happened. And I say this, I'm not saying it to Newmys. Those are stories that happen in our marriages, whether you want to believe them or not.
I can't recall.
Remember them or not.
I'm just saying I just can't recall that.
I understand.
I can't recall that.
I understand.
That story.
My sons them know about it. My daughters them know about it. But what I will, even my mother remembers it because she was there as well. But what I will say.
But the question is, why would I let you go to Red Lobster by yourself?
Because you didn't feel like going. You was like, we could wait till the weekend, but my birthday.
Hold up. There has never really been an opportunity where I would not say your birthday.
Jerry,
dude, I would go all out for your days like that.
I'm telling you, it was through the week, and you didn't feel like going.
I would go all out for days like that.
Let me tell you something. What I will say is that the incident happened. Okay, it happened.
It did. I guess it did.
Okay, and so what I'm saying to you is that things like that in our lives, when it came to me being able to just fall back. Now I will say things like when I was like sick, like you would tell the kids, hey, get out of there, leave your mom alone. You close the door, you take them to McDonald's, or you go down there and cook 2 vegetables and a protein. You know what I mean? You know, you open up a can of corn, a can of green beans, and fry some chicken or some pork chops, right?
It's a wrap.
Or take them to McDonald's. And so when I was really sick, because you knew if I was sick, I was sick, because there wasn't times where I was sick, right? So you knew if I was sick, I was sick. You know,
I think so many times though, Sheik, and I think I've said this before, we can take some instances within a relationship, and we can make them so great in a negative sense. But we can look at all the little things that lead up to greatness, and we'll take that for granted and look at it like it's nothing. So if that happened, oh, you said it happened, and I believe it did happen. If you know, I'm not going to sit there and call you a lie, nothing like that. But we can look at that and say, hey, yeah, that could be something that could be significant to you. But what about all the rest of the things that were done in a good manner?
And that's why, like, for example, and I say this all the time, me having my baby with you was never a question.
Mm-hmm.
Baby Jerry was playing because, like I said from the very beginning of all this, you have
Mm-hmm.
always been an amazing father,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have always, I never, when we got together, you were in your 20s, I was in my 20s. We
Right.
were still young. But at the same time, what I do know about people is that they're only going to change for who they want to change for and when they want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when you are in a relationship, you either stay around until that person does or they don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, like, listen, the person you are today, from what I saw from afar, I used to wonder, hell, why you couldn't be that for me?
Right.
And somebody told me because I didn't give you the space to be. So I take that ownership. But then somebody also said because you learned it from me. So I have to look at it from that way too. Two things can be true at one time.
Right.
Right. And so for me, I'm just looking at it like, but at the same time, I never felt like I could fall back like that. And that
But
had
see,
nothing, that wasn't all on you. That was also my
so
trauma coming into the relationship. Think about the thing, because just like you had your trauma, I had my trauma.
okay,
And what
so
I mean by that, you talking about absentee father, you talking about first marriage, abuse in the family, just
mhm,
all kind of
all
things,
kind of
right?
things.
Leading up to
So
that.
let me ask you a question, and you can answer this or you don't. You don't have to. So when you had that trauma and you never healed or tried to navigate that trauma or in a mental health way, and it goes into the first marriage, then it, because some of the traumas that was in that first marriage led over to the second marriage with us. So you're not dealing with that trauma. Do you think that impacted you in a way?
I will say this. Let's say this. First, I dealt with my trauma along the way in a lot of ways. I was getting myself educated. That's why I was getting myself educated. That's why I continue to get myself educated and get myself involved with things and go through the sessions I needed to go through. There was a lot of things I did in that
Right,
time frame
right,
that you probably didn't even notice, right? And I knew that there was things going on because at one point I remember when we were going through our divorce, my hair was falling out. And so, but when I talk about trauma, I never hid it from you. For example, I told you I tell everybody, this is my relationship with my father. It's not that I have it's not that I don't, it's just that you can't lie to me because once you tell me you're going to do something, I hold you
mm,
to it. So my trauma for me wasn't a negative thing. It was the way I saw life and men. And what I saw is that people, not just men, people like to say men, but people in general will do what they want to do for whom they want to do it when they want to do it. And that's what I learned from my father. So you can say whether that was a bad trauma or not. But what I understood is that if he wanted to be there, he would have been there. If you wanted to be with me, you would have been with me. And so that's how my trauma
so
rolled over into our relationship.
and I think that's true to a certain point. But once again, it goes back. You say you were dealing with your trauma on your own basis or on your. If I don't know how to cope with your trauma or deal with it, how do I help you within that relationship?
But here's the thing though, because we were young, remember you had absentee trauma. So one of the things that you do to cope with absentee trauma is what? When you see one house falling down, you catch on to another house. Because why? You don't want to feel abandoned. So people that don't want to feel abandoned, because that was your trauma. People that don't want to feel abandoned, before this house falls down, they hold on to the next house. It's a continuous thing. That's trauma that you were dealing with, and I recognized that for you long before. So I knew
I
that.
don't.
So
I
we
don't.
were both dealing with our trauma. Nobody comes into any
No. I'm
relationship
asking you
perfectly
about.
whole.
I'm asking you about your specific traumas that you went through in life. Had you
They
had you
made me
dealt with them
absolutely
when
but
because
I was very open about them. I told you all the bad things that happened to
you
me.
told me the
I was
bad
very
things.
open. So
So
rather my
being open with them and dealing with
transparency,
them is two different things.
but at the,
You can
no,
recognize them and just say, "Hey, I choose to put them on the shelf," or
no,
do I deal with them?
I never put them on the shelf. There was never a time in our relationship, even when it came to, remember when it came to our daughter, for example. Remember when she came to live with us when we were 8 years old, when she was 8 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And I took her to, take care of whatever, not to say too much.
Right.
You already knew. And I explained to you then why we have to make sure we got to find out the truth about everything, if you remember. Because, and I told you then, and we wasn't even married then.
Right.
Because I knew you as a man did not understand what it looked like.
What it looks like.
Correct.
Correct.
And so
right.
I had to step in. So so for me, that was something that I could recognize that you wouldn't have been able to. So my trauma helped us, right? And then moving forward, even when situations happen, when I had to go to the house with a baseball bat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because why? I knew what that abuse looked like too.
Mm.
And to this day, she'll tell you, yeah, that was really happening.
Mm.
You understand what I'm saying? Why? Because I knew what that looked like. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, I had this trauma, but I wasn't blind about what it can be. It was also something that I had already experienced and I recognized it. So I'll be a fool to go through it again.
So, but with you though, I think a lot of times you have said this, I would rather be aggressive and just like with the bat. You going to
Well, because think about it. She was this tall. They were that tall. I was not about to do that. And you were in the field. We wasn't doing that. And we're going to leave that alone because that's exposing too much.
Yeah.
But we were not about to do that.
No, but what I'm saying though, with your trauma, it's like it plays out in a way that you can be.
And my trauma, and I'm 52, and my trauma, that's the thing about trauma. One thing I know, and I tell people all the time, it's not a bad thing. I don't know nobody that's 100% whole except for the one guy that walked the earth on water. Everybody else got their own stuff.
I agree with that.
So just because we have this, part of all that made me who I am. Mm-hmm. So the person that's a go-getter that you attached to, and you saw that was about taking care of business, it may have been some that was also what attracted you to me. Mm-hmm. So although it may have backed you up, so whether you took from me and say, I'm going to use these things that I learned from her, or I was a good doggone role model for your daughters, because you had daughters when I met you.
Right.
Okay. So regardless what it is that I know that for me, who I am was the way I was supposed to be. And that's just the way it is, because you may not have valued it. And that's why I had to, and if you did, Newmys, what I'm saying is that, this is what I'm saying.
You're throwing stuff out
no,
there.
No.
No.
Let me rephrase that. Right. It did not work where the person that I was suited the person that you were at the time. Mm. And so now that we are, you on your road to, you on your route, I'm on my route. Maybe I was to be in your life to inspire your daughters, right? Because we didn't know what was going to happen 2 years after we got married.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't know that was going to happen.
We didn't know that.
Your daughter's birthday is the same day as mine. Yeah. Right? Maybe I was there for you because I was there for her. We don't know. Right. But what I do know is that it got us here. And I think that it was one of those things that we had to go through what we went through, because where we are now in life and where our kids are, it's like.
See, let me say this though, not to hone in on trauma as much, but when we look at our community and our age group, it may be more acceptable now, but at our age group, it wasn't cool to talk about all your problems to anybody. We looked at talking to our problems, hey, you weak, or you know, and then we joined the culture of the military, which actually uplifted that even more. Right. Because in the Black community, we just do not talk about a lot of these issues that are impacting our lives like they are now.
And that's how it was back in the 90s when you and I first started dating.
It was that way.
However, I feel, for me, and women are going to always be different than men. We're going to always show a different type of emotions than you guys show. For me, I always tell people, I'm like inside out, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Like, it's nothing for, like, it was nothing for me to tell you how I felt in the moment. It was nothing for me to tell you how I felt about anything. Sometimes I would tell you too many things. Because, and you would be like, like, you telling me that? I'm like, well, that's how I feel, right? And I would tell you things, and sometimes it was too much.
But this is the problem. This is the problem with a lot of times when we will have a conversation. Whatever comes up don't need to come out.
And I didn't, but see, with my husband, I didn't think I had to have a filter.
But come on now.
Because
I'm
I didn't
still
think
a
I
man.
had. I didn't
I'm still
think,
a man,
but,
and I still think a certain
but
way.
if you trusted me enough to marry me, then you trust me enough to know that what I'm saying to you is not to hurt you, it's to help us.
Okay, so think of it like this.
Once you validated me and said, Yashika, I want to marry you, or will you be my wife? You told me that you trusted me. That's what I heard you say. You trusted me. You entrusted in me because you came into the relationship with 2 kids. I came in a relationship with 1. At that point, I was pretty much handling our financial issues, right? I was handling a lot of things. We were in school together. I was doing your coursework. We were doing the damn thing together.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that once you validated me, you told me you trusted me, which means that I'm sorry. That's what I heard.
See, that's what you heard.
And that's why I'm still single.
No,
that's why I'm still single.
You know,
now because I'm not, listen, if I can't be in a relationship where I tell my husband, even with you now, right? If I see you and you're not looking your best, I'm going to tell you about it. Because because remember, I see you differently than you see yourself.
But see, this is the problem, right?
And I know that honesty without compassion is abuse. I know that.
So it ain't what you say, it's how you say it.
But Newmys, I feel that we've been rocking for 30 years.
We can be rocking for 40 years, but it ain't what you say, it's how you say it.
But sometimes people just got to hear the truth, and I don't know how to be different.
Is there a way to say the truth and still get to the same truth?
Absolutely.
It's absolutely there.
And here's the thing. I recognize that if I say something to people, right, and I'll be like, you all right? You doing okay? Well, what's wrong? And it's like, okay, well, I tell you what, you ain't looking good today. Because since you're going to have an attitude anyway, let me just tell you what it is. You looking like shit. What are you going through? I can see it all on your face. So what I'm saying to you, Newmys, is that this is who, like, I'm not making excuses for one. And what I'm saying is that when I have a husband, I don't want to tiptoe around my husband because I don't want him to tiptoe around me.
It's not tiptoeing. It's understanding your audience.
No. If once you married me, you told me. See, that's why we're not married. Because
I disagree
we see
with that
things
because
differently. Because I'm not about this. Listen, I'm not about, like you tell me all the time.
So
you can't stand me. What do you tell me all the time? I can't stand you. I can't stand you. You say I can't stand you because I'll say something to you and it'll be in your doggone face. And the thing about it is that 20 people probably have already said it to you, but they said it to you with a wrapped in a pretty bow.
No.
Newmys, I know this.
What I'm trying to say to you is this. As a woman or a man and you in a relationship, you still got to know how to curve things a certain way. It's just the life. It's just like when our kid come home and he having trouble in his math. You can't say you stupid,
of
ignorant.
Course, you would never.
You say, hey son,
do that.
Let's take a look at it this way.
Yeah, you would never do that.
Just like in a relationship,
right.
You want to say, hey babe, I think I need you to
give me an example of something that you felt like I did that was just harsh. Because in my mind, right?
Okay, so I give you this one example.
Let me say this. In my mind, if I got to a point where I was in your face, that's because I had already tried the other ways.
Okay.
Right? And maybe you didn't hear me and I was just fed up. But let me hear what you have to say.
Okay, so I'm going to make this example. And this is just a simple example of how I felt once you said this to me. I don't need you, but I like having you around. So most men will tell you.
But what did I say after that, though?
Okay, let me.
You got to elaborate because I also said I wake up and I choose you.
Yeah, you choose.
I don't have to have you. I choose you.
Okay, so listen. What do most men want?
They want to be needed.
They want to be needed. So that's why you will see that guy who will go to McDonald's. This is a millionaire, and he will marry down. He will go get that chick.
That's your self-esteem issue, not mine.
No. He will go get that chick.
You're absolutely right. And then you know what he'll do?
But
he'll still end up where he's at right now, still searching for something more.
How would he be in it? Why would he be searching for something more?
Because he doesn't feel complete because that person doesn't challenge them enough. He didn't become a millionaire by not being.
A man don't want to be challenged.
In certain areas, he do.
Well, he want to be challenged.
Because listen, if you every day got a yes sir around you, or a yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, you don't want your woman to be a yes sir. You don't want no lapdog. You know what you're gonna do? You're gonna go out there and cheat. Because what did I used to tell you about me? You put me on a pedestal, and that's where you wanted me to be at. So when it came to the freaky deaky stuff, you didn't want me to do that, but you would do it in the chicks on the streets. And like I told you, I'm a whole woman.
No, I don't think that was the case.
I told you, Newmys, don't act like we never had this conversation.
We had that conversation, but
in other words, who I am as a person.
So
right? But then you want that out in the streets. Like, make it make sense to me.
Listen,
like make it make sense.
Men are different.
Okay, well, no, confused men are different.
It
The
ain't no
ones who don't
confused
know
man
who they
that's
are,
different.
the ones who don't know who they are yet are different. Because a man doesn't know quite who he is until he knows what type of woman he wants.
I don't know.
That's just what I feel.
But I just think in my mind that there's ways that you can say things and do things that you still keep all the respect.
Well, and that's why as a woman,
it.
and that's why as a woman, and I respect that, and I 100% respect. I'm not negating that. What I'm saying is that when it comes to a person that's dating and in marriages, you have to find that person that is okay with that, because who you are today may very well be who you always is. And if you knew that I was this way and I was never going to change, then you should never ask me to be your wife.
I didn't know you was listen. We used to have candid conversations,
and I was still
life.
harsh.
No, you wasn't.
If you was doing some stuff, boy, if you was doing some stuff you wasn't supposed to be doing, stop it, Newmys.
No,
stop it. I have one thing you could say about me is that for 30 years I have been consistent.
30 years she has been crazy.
That's right. She's consistently crazy. That's it.
So I'm glad you can admit it.
Yeah, I've been consistent. Right? I'm the same person. Now that I mature and I try to, maybe wrap it up a little bit. Yeah, but at the end of it, I don't want to. And if I have to, now granted, I understand. I always tell you that, and that's why I say respect. When we talked about this in the beginning, a man has two things into himself, and I'm gonna say this before we wrap this up. His and his pride. So I've always told you from day one, I would never disrespect those things. Your manhood and your pride. Did I not tell you that?
Yeah.
Man only has two things, his manhood and his pride, right? Between his legs and his pride. I never disrespected either one of those. So if there was a time in our relationship when I was coming at you harsh, that's because I knew you wasn't being the person that I knew you could be. And I'm sorry if that was too much for you.
No.
Because what I won't do is sit back and let you just be like I will never, even as my son's father. That's why to this day, if I see you're not doing what you need to do, I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to put it in a bow sometime, and sometimes I'm going to be harsh about it. Why? Because again, I see you how you are meant to be, not who you are in this moment. I see you. I don't see what you're going through right now. I see you. And I know that you one of the good people. And so when I say I'm sorry. And so that's why I say, as me as a wife, I have to be with the person that can accept me like being that way. Because I don't want you to be operating on 2 when I know you're a freaking 10. Right. I'm not going to have it.
So, but the rap put a bow on it for me, I think, and within our situations, we respected each other, and we continue to respect each other as we move forward to try and develop the things what we are developing.
Yeah.
You cannot go into a situation and look at a person and say they're beneath you. We're right there. Your need, my needs,
That's
and
right.
that encompasses what we leave with our kids. And I think a lot of times people start something and they feel like because it's not where it used to be, that it can't be better.
Right.
I think we're better apart when you look at the big picture.
Of course.
We have done great. You've done great things since then. I've done okay things since then. And so you look at life and you say, hey, but we still can come together on one accord and understand respect goes both ways, and we're going to dish it out that way and until the day we leave here. And I think that sums it up for me.
Because it's about the bigger purpose, right?
The bigger purpose.
Which is, you ain't having no more babies at this age, and I ain't having no more babies at this age.
I hope not.
So the ones we got to make sure they good. Yeah. And so we talk about, what is it? Legacy?
Legacy.
Family.
That's what it is.
That's it. It's legacy and family. And I'm all out of my drink.
You all out of your drink? Okay, I still got some more Mountain Dew.